Ever feel like you're constantly pulled in a million directions, like you're in a tug of war for your own attention?
Oh, absolutely. It's the story of our modern lives, isn't it?
Totally. So today, we're diving deep into digital minimalism to figure out how to reclaim our focus and, actually live in the moment.
Love that. And we're taking a unique approach looking at Cal Newport's digital minimalism alongside Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Right, because at first glance, they might seem totally different, but
But they both get at this core idea of being intentional with what we allow into our lives, both physically and digitally.
exactly. Okay, so let's jump right in. I think we all feel the pressure of constant distraction these days, but you mentioned something super interesting earlier. You said this whole battle for our attention isn't actually new, that it's been going on for centuries.
It's true. We often talk about the internet as this wild new frontier of distraction. But the reality is, this fight for our attention has a long history. It even has a name, the attention economy.
The attention economy. Okay, now you have to break that down for me. Where does it all begin?
Well, believe it or not, you can trace it all the way back to the 1830s with the penny press.
The penny press. I'm drawing a blank.
Right, so before that, newspapers were pretty expensive, targeting a very specific wealthy audience. But then Benjamin Day comes along, launches the New York Sun, the first penny press newspaper, and suddenly news is affordable for everyone.
Okay, I'm seeing where this is going. Wider reach, more eyes on the page.
Exactly. Advertisers were presented with this massive, untapped audience, and that changed everything.
So instead of relying on subscriptions from a select few, newspapers started chasing ad dollars from the masses.
Precisely. It's the same model that fueled those 19th century tabloid wars and later shaped radio and television. And now it's online.
But you said something earlier about smartphones taking it to a whole other level.
Oh, absolutely. The smartphone isn't just competing for your attention. It's hijacking your brain's reward system, making you crave that next notification.
It's so true, and I hate to admit how often I get sucked in. But here's something else that's interesting. I was reading Facebook's blog series, Hard Questions, and they actually acknowledge the potential downsides of social media.
That's right. They even have an article titled, "Is Spending Time on Social Media Bad for Us?" Which is incredibly ironic, don't you think?
The irony is not lost on me. They're basically saying, hey, this thing we built might be bad for you, but keep using it.
Exactly. It's this weird paradox, right?
Mm.
If we actually listened to them and became mindful users instead of mindless scrollers, their entire business model would crumble.
So if we're wired to get sucked into these digital distractions, how do we break free? Like, how do we actually take back control?
Well, that's where digital minimalism comes in. And no, it's not about tossing your smartphone and living like a hermit.
Okay, good, because I'm a little too attached to Google Maps for that.
Right. It's about being intentional with your tech, choosing quality over quantity. Think of it like decluttering your digital life, kind of like Marie Kondo encourages us to declutter our homes.
Ooh, I love that connection. It's like a digital KonMari method. And speaking of, Cal Newport shares some interesting stories in his book about people who tried deleting social media apps as an experiment.
And the results were pretty amazing, right?
Mhm.
So many people found it incredibly freeing, like a breath of fresh air. They rediscovered hobbies. They were more present with loved ones.
So it's not about ditching technology altogether, but rather being more mindful of how we use it, right?
Exactly. Just like physical clutter can overwhelm our homes, think about all the mental space taken up by digital noise, those endless notifications, updates, and feeds. It's exhausting.
You're right. It's exhausting. And it makes it so hard to focus on anything meaningful. It's like that feeling when you walk into a completely messy room and just feel overwhelmed.
That's a great analogy. And, it reminds me of a story about Abraham Lincoln and his need for solitude, even during the Civil War.
Wait, really? Tell me more.
So imagine being the President of the United States during one of the most chaotic times in history, and still feeling the need to escape the constant demands. Lincoln would literally sneak away to a cottage to think and write, even dodging his security details sometimes, just to get some peace and quiet.
Wow, that puts this into perspective. If the president during the Civil War needed that kind of solitude, it makes you realize how crucial it is for us today, right?
Absolutely, especially in our always connected world. Those moments of disconnection are vital for our creativity, our relationships, even just our ability to think straight.
It's so true. And while those moments alone are essential, we're social creatures at heart. So let's talk about how we can reclaim meaningful conversation in this digital age. Because honestly, somewhere along the way, it feels like we started confusing connection with conversation.
Yes. And those are two very different things. We are wired for the nuances of face-to-face conversation, something digital communication can't fully replicate no matter how many emojis we use.
Right. And that's where I think Cal Newport's don't click like practice is so fascinating.
It's such a simple idea, but so powerful.
Right. He argues that clicking like, while seemingly harmless, can actually prevent deeper connection.
Because we're reducing our interactions to a single click, right? We're basically saying, I see your post, without truly engaging with the person behind it.
It's true. And we miss out on those richer, more fulfilling conversations that come from actually talking to someone.
Exactly. So instead of just liking that vacation photo, maybe pick up the phone and say, hey, tell me everything about your trip.
It's about prioritizing those high-quality, in-person interactions that genuinely nourish our souls.
Exactly. And speaking of things that nourish our souls, let's dive into Cal Newport's concept of high-quality leisure. This isn't about just vegging out in front of the TV. It's about choosing activities that challenge us and bring a sense of accomplishment.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What exactly defines high-quality leisure?
Think about activities that truly engage your mind and body. It's about the satisfaction that comes from, say, learning a new skill or mastering a craft. It's an investment in your free time.
I love that. And you know what it makes me think of? That example from Newport's book about Mr. Money Mustache, this personal finance guru who retired early.
Oh, yes. I love that example. What did he do again?
He took up welding as a hobby.
Welding. That's not your typical retirement hobby. I love it. It perfectly embodies the high-quality leisure idea. It takes effort, skill, and a willingness to learn. Plus, it saves him money on home repairs.
Talk about a win-win. It's amazing how these different ideas, digital minimalism, the KonMari method, high-quality leisure, all point toward living more intentionally.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious choices that align with our values and create a life that reflects who we truly are, both online and off.
So well said. It's about taking back control and designing a life that sparks joy. You know, it's funny how we talk about sparking joy in our physical spaces, but it's just as important in our digital lives, too.
It's so true. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about Marie Kondo's approach. It's not just about tidying up. It's about connecting with our belongings on a deeper level.
Right, like that whole thing about holding an item and asking yourself, does this spark joy? It seems kind of woo-woo at first, but...
But it totally works. Because it's not just about decluttering. It's about being really intentional about what we surround ourselves with, the energy we allow into our lives, and that absolutely applies to our digital spaces too.
Okay, I'm curious, how do we actually do that with, like, apps and files? It's not like we can physically hold them in our hands.
You're right, it's not exactly the same. But we can still be mindful of how they make us feel. Think about it. You're scrolling through your phone, and you see a notification from a certain app pop up. How does it make you feel? Excited? Anxious? Maybe a little drained?
So it's about checking in with ourselves, being aware of those subtle emotional reactions we have to all the digital stuff we interact with every day.
Exactly. Just like Kondo talks about paying attention to the physical sensations we get when we hold an object, we can tune into our emotional landscape as we engage with our devices.
So if a particular app is consistently stressing me out or making me feel bad, maybe it's time to say bye-bye, even if everyone else seems to love it.
Precisely. You get to choose what sparks joy for you, and you have permission to say no to the things that don't, even if they're digital.
It's like creating a digital haven that actually brings you joy, just like you would with your physical space.
Exactly. And, beyond those emotional reactions, there's also the practical side of digital decluttering, like tackling those overflowing inboxes and messy desktops.
Oh, tell me about it. My digital junk drawer is out of control.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's like having a constantly messy room. It weighs on you even if you don't realize it.
Right. It's that mental clutter that just drains your energy.
Exactly. So think about applying those KonMari principles, finding a home for everything, making sure everything has its place. Like maybe you create a system for managing your emails, set aside dedicated time each day to go through them, unsubscribe from all those newsletters you never read.
And maybe finally tackle that folder on my desktop that's just labeled MISC. You know, the one that's full of random files from like 2017.
Yes, that mysterious Miskic folder.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much lighter you feel, both mentally and emotionally, once you tackle that digital clutter.
Seriously. It's like you can finally breathe again.
Right. And it makes you wonder why we let it pile up in the first place.
I know. It's so easy to fall into the trap of digital hoarding. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
What about photos? We're constantly snapping pics on our phones, but do we ever actually look at them?
It's true. I have thousands of photos on my phone, but I bet I haven't looked at most of them in years.
Me too. And it's not just us. I think we've developed this urge to document every single moment, but in doing so, we forget to actually experience those moments.
So true. We're so busy trying to capture the perfect shot for Instagram that we miss out on actually being present. And then we're left with this overwhelming backlog of photos, most of which hold very little meaning.
So how do we apply the KonMari method to our digital photo albums?
Huh?
Do we go through each picture and ask, does this spark joy?
You absolutely can. Think about it like curating a physical photo album. You wouldn't keep every single picture you've ever taken.
Right. Only the special ones.
Exactly. Choose the photos that tell a story, evoke a positive emotion, the ones that you actually want to remember years from now, and the rest, let them go.
And for those photos that we do treasure, maybe it's time to print them, create physical albums.
Yes, there's something magical about holding a physical photograph.
Mhm.
It's a tangible connection to the past.
Plus, it's way more fun to gather around a photo album with friends and family than to huddle around a tiny phone screen.
Exactly. And speaking of doing things in real life, let's circle back to that concept of high-quality leisure.
Yeah.
We talked about Mr. Money Mustache and his welding hobby, but obviously that's not for everyone.
Right. It's about finding activities that light you up, that challenge you in a good way, and make you feel like you're really using your time well.
Exactly. Maybe it's learning a new language, or picking up an instrument, or volunteering in your community. There are so many possibilities.
I love that. And it's not about becoming an expert overnight, right? It's about enjoying the process of learning, of trying new things, of rediscovering the joy of being a beginner.
Yes, it's about being present in the process, not just focus on the end result. And you know what else I think falls under the umbrella of high-quality leisure?
What's that?
Slow media. That's like the slow food movement, but for our digital consumption.
Slow media. That's a new one. Break it down for me.
So instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media or binge-watching shows, it's about choosing content that's actually meaningful to you. Things that are thought-provoking, informative, or just plain fun.
It's about being more intentional with what we consume and how we consume it.
Exactly. It's about savoring the experience, not just passively absorbing information. So, for example, instead of immediately grabbing your phone first thing in the morning, maybe you spend those precious moments meditating or journaling.
Ooh, I love that. It's about reclaiming those little pockets of time throughout the day and using them to connect with ourselves and the world around us.
Precisely. It's about finding a healthy balance with technology, enjoying its benefits without letting it rule our lives.
But what about those of us who feel totally addicted to our devices? Is it even possible to break free from that constant pull?
Of course,
Hmm.
it's never too late to make a change. Remember, you have the power to choose. Maybe start with something small. Delete those tempting social media apps from your phone, or limit yourself to checking email just a couple of times a day.
It's like hitting the reset button on our relationship with technology.
Exactly. And if you're really feeling bold, you could even try a dumb phone, one of those simpler phones that are designed for, well, calling and texting.
Wait, really? People are doing that?
More and more these days. They're choosing to simplify their digital lives, to focus on what truly matters, and they're finding it incredibly freeing.
Wow, it's like a rebellion against the digital excess that surrounds us. It's inspiring to hear that people are taking back control.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder that technology should serve us, not the other way around.
It's so easy to feel like we're at the mercy of technology, but you're right, we do have a choice.
We absolutely do. We have way more power than we realize to shape our digital lives, create healthy boundaries, and reclaim our time and attention.
It's about being intentional, mindful, and actually taking action. Like not just talking about it, but actually doing something.
Yes, exactly. And the best part is, you don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Pick one thing that resonates with you and commit to it.
It could be as simple as deleting that one app that you know is sucking up all your time, or setting aside like 15 minutes a day for a tech-free activity.
Every little step, no matter how small, moves you closer to a more intentional and fulfilling life. And the more you practice, the easier it gets.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
Don't get lost in the digital noise. Remember what truly matters to you and make choices that align with your values.
Such great advice. You've given us so much to think about today. I have a feeling this deep dive is going to spark some big changes in our listeners' lives.
That's what we're hoping for. A simpler, more intentional life is possible. And it all starts with a single conscious choice.
So tell us, what resonated most with you in this deep dive? What one change are you feeling inspired to make? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember, you've got this.